The Mariners apparently don't plan on deploying a six-man rotation when Bryce Miller returns. We'll talk about that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. This is Tyler Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Mariners' offensive regression in the month of May and get you set for their upcoming 3-game series with the Nationals, but we're actually going to start here. Yesterday, we got asked about the possibility of the Mariners rolling out a 6-man rotation. And Colby, you and I were both in agreement that we believe that this was where things were ultimately heading, with Bryce Miller saying that he's on a 6-day routine. George Kirby has been on a 6-day routine as he gets back into the fold here. But today, right before we hit record on this thing, Daniel Kramer wrote an article or published an article on MLB.com where he talked to both Jerry Dipoto and Mariners director of pitching strategy Trent Blank about the possibility of a 6-man rotation. And both Dipoto and Blank said, yeah, that's on the table, but we're not looking to go that route at the moment. So that's kind of interesting. Now, they do have quite a few off days baked in here before they go on a very long stretch at the end of June and into the month of July. They had an off day yesterday. They have an off day after the Twins series wraps up on Sunday, and then they play 3 more at home against the Orioles, which means that George Kirby is only going to have to pitch once in between those off days. Kirby will pitch again against the Orioles, I believe, in the first game against the Orioles, maybe the second game. Not too sure, but that stretch will be interesting because that's 9 games in 9 days. So they play 3 at home against Baltimore. Then they go on the road. They go to Anaheim for 3, and then they go to Arizona for 3. So George Kirby will have to pitch twice over that stretch. And then we'll see how they kind of re-implement Bryce Miller into the fold and all that. But yeah, really interesting. Little strange, honestly, because I felt like this was where they were heading. They were absolutely going to deploy a 6-man rotation, especially with how well Emerson Hancock has pitched for the most part, and Logan Evans has held it down for the most part. But right now it doesn't seem like this is really under consideration here by the Mariners. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little weird. Simply because again, you put everybody who's on a rehab stint right now for the Mariners are working their way back is on a 6-day kind of throwing schedule, so to speak. And it'd be really weird for them to do that and then just immediately transition to, your normal regular 5-man rotation schedule. It feels a bit sudden. It feels a bit unnecessary. And I think when you look at the schedule for the month of June, you do have a couple off days coming up here in the first half of the month, but in the second half of the month, you're playing 17 games in 17 days. And, we don't know how Bryce is going to react. He hasn't been good all year, and we don't know that he will be just because of this IL stint. Kirby hasn't quite built up, the stamina yet relative to the rest of the league, just because he missed, a month, almost 2 months. Yeah, it's, and we don't know when / if Kirby's or Gilbert's going to come back and how effective he's going to be. They're all pitching through something, like nothing's been healed. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, it feels like with the back half of the June schedule coming up, this would be a good month to deploy a 6-man rotation. And we talked about this. You don't have to do it for an entire year, but it does feel like because of what Miller and Gilbert and Kirby are pitching through right now, and because of just the, general limitations that Brian Woo's probably going to be on, because he's going to be on some kind of innings count this year, I assume, and he hasn't been the beacon of health himself. So it just felt like it was really lining up to be a 6-man rotation, and Hancock is pitching well enough to kind of justify it in the short term. So yeah, it's a little surprising. Again, it doesn't mean that they won't go to a 6-man in a week or two, but Right now, it seems odd because it seems like they were lining all that up to go to the 6-man rotation, even if
Yeah.
it is only for a short period of time. And so, yeah, it's weird, kind of. You kind of have to trust them in this regard. They take really good care of their pitchers and all of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you just say, okay, well, we'll see what happens. But it does seem like it was set up kind of weird uh, to, just have this 6-day cycle and
Uh,
then immediately rule out a 6-man rotation when you're getting close to having your 5 guys back. But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
obviously we talked about the downside of a 6-man rotation. It means fewer starts for Brian Wu and Logan Gilbert.
It means
More,
that also Trent Blank said that some of their guys don't like having the extra day.
Yeah.
In this article. So that also has to be taken into account here. Yeah. So, Jerry said, quote, when we get Logan back, when we get Bryce back, when we get George built up, we can have those conversations talking about a 6-man rotation. But right now, we're not trying to be too creative. We're just trying to figure out how to manage today and tomorrow, end quote. So apparently Kirby is only going to be on this 6-day timeline for another week or two. Then he should be able to go, every 5 days. But I mean, he kind of has to already with, again, the 9 games and 9 days stretch coming up here. So yeah, again, kind of interested to see how maybe they circumvent that. Maybe there's a way that they can kind of work it where Logan Evans makes one more start, then they bring in Bryce to push George back a day, or I don't know. We'll see what they do here. But yeah, it just seems like this is kind of the opportune time, especially with Evans and Hancock more or less in a groove at the moment, to do this. But yeah, doesn't seem like they are. But what's really interesting though is like once Logan gets back, and Logan is going to have to go on a rehab stint. That was confirmed in the article by Daniel Kramer, which obviously he was going to have to, but again, that was confirmed. What's that going to look like when he gets back? What kind of limitations are going to be placed on him? And then Miller said after his live BP, quote, "I know the cause, but I don't know if I should say it. I'll say that everything's structure was really good. There's something in there that causes inflammation and something I can't just take out without missing the rest of the year. So this ideally gets me to the end of the year, and then we can reassess and see if I need to clean it up or anything. But at the end of the day, it feels good." But yeah, so that's the end of the quote, by the way. So we'll see what that looks like for him. But that sounds like something that he's still just going to have to manage and work through.
For a team that will do everything imaginable to make sure it has 8 dudes in the bullpen, they never seem to use that 8th dude. It's weird that they would potentially skip a 6-man rotation so that they can carry 8 bullpen arms when they're probably never even going to use that 8th guy unless it's absolute mop-up duty. So, but it is what it is. Hopefully the Mariners pitching is this close to getting back and being healthy, and you'd love for your 5 dudes to just be your 5 dudes and all that. But I think, just based on where we are and where we've been this season, 6-man made some sense, at least in the short term. And I'm a little surprised they're not going with it. And again, they might at some point,
Yeah. They didn't rule it out.
Yeah. Just not right. Or that's not the plan when they think those guys will be healthy. So, we'll see how it goes, but, yeah, so far the Mariners have dodged some direct shots to their pitching. Lots of glancing blows, but so far everything trending towards the Mariners having their 5 guys back and in the rotation at the same time for the first time all year here in the next 2-3 weeks. So fingers crossed on that front.
Yeah. We'll see how long it takes for Logan to make his way back. We'll see how many rehab starts he has to make and all that. And we'll see when exactly that rehab assignment is going to start. But it does seem like he's getting pretty close here.
Been about 5 weeks for Logan.
When was that Marlins
series?
Series?
April. I want to say mid-April.
It has been. The Marlins Series was, so that game was April 25th, so it's been a little over a month.
Okay. So I'd say probably 2 starts would be my guess.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll hear something here pretty soon. Justin Hollander does talk to the media at the start of every homestand, so he might have an update there on that front today.
Probably.
So yeah. So naturally, as it always goes with the Locked On Mariners podcast, as soon as we publish this, you'll probably know by now. So yeah. Anyway, we're going to talk about the Mariners' offensive struggles in the month of May. Talk a little bit about what's going on there, and then we'll get you set for their 3-game series coming up here against the Washington Nationals in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. For instant reactions following every Mariners game, be sure to tune in to the Mariners postcast with Anderson Hurst and Christopher Crawford, available on both the Locked On Mariners YouTube and podcast feeds. So, Colby, it's not been a great month for the Mariners offensively. It definitely wasn't a great road trip for them offensively. That's kind of an understatement. It was kind of a slog to watch, to be honest. But yeah, the Mariners right now in the month of May, they are sitting directly right in the middle of the league in WRC plus, 100 WRC plus. They are league average. But we have seen them regress in terms of the walk rate. They're walking just 8.5% of the time right now. That's 13th in the league. They have the 4th highest K rate in the league in the month of May. They're not hitting for a ton of average. They're not really getting on base that much. They're not slugging at all. It's been a rough go for the offense. Now, obviously, we expected them to regress, especially with what the bottom of the lineup was doing with guys like Leo Rivas, Miles Mastrobuoni, etc. You were getting actually some considerable amount of production out of those guys, and Jorge Polanco has certainly come down to earth and then some. But watching this offense over the course of this month, Colby, what do you think has been the biggest issue, both individually and then just as a whole?
Yeah, the biggest issue individually right now is Jorge Polanco, because in April he was your best hitter. In May, he's been your worst hitter. I mean, I don't know statistically, but he's the guy, who is disappointing you the most this month, I would say.
He has the biggest swing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the biggest variance. So, and by the way, he still can't play the field and he can't hit against left-handed pitching.
By the way, we saw him take one at bat from the right side in Houston.
Yeah,
and then they pinch hit for him again.
So we'll see what happens. There's a couple lefties on the mound here this weekend or this week, so we'll see how they handle that. But you basically have a platoon DH, which isn't that the reason you DFA'd Mitch Haniger, because you didn't want a platoon DH?
Right.
And so you're kind of like in this situation that you otherwise wouldn't have been in.
No, at the very least, Jorge is a strong side platoon, but whereas Mitch was a weak side.
There,
but
and he's also and he also doesn't have the myriad of different injuries. Like Jorge showed you in the first month that he can still swing it, like he can still play a little bit, whereas Mitch, it just looked like he was cooked. But still, you're kind of in that situation now, and I don't really know how you fix that. I hate, I don't love platoons in general. I really hate them when they are DHs only.
Or first base.
You're just not doing that. Like, you're just not built to do that because you don't have his right-handed counterpart, really. So you're kind of in a tough spot. So that's the biggest thing is just the variant swing on Polo. But the other part is that you have some guys who came up in the middle of April and they were really good for a couple of weeks, as you kind of expect them to be. Like that is when the league is still trying to figure these guys out and they can do some things. And that's when Leo Rivas comes up and he has a 500 on base in his first, 2 or 3 weeks. Now, I don't know if he's bad right now because he's being the league's figured him out or if it's because the Mariners just stopped playing him a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, Miles Mastroboni isn't performing like he did. Ben Williamson isn't performing at all like he did in his first couple weeks. Although they're picking that up a little bit. Dylan Moore hasn't been performing like he did in the first month. And so you have your role players not really producing like they did in April. You have a more limited lineup because Polo isn't hitting and he can't play 30-40% of the games and he can't play half the game in the games that he does play. So you're kind of in a tight spot there. And obviously, Julio hasn't exploded yet, although he's been pretty consistently good all year. Cal isn't hitting a home run a day. I mean, those are things you expect, right? And so to me, this all just kind of looks like a return to normalcy. But I will say, like, the one thing that I'm noticing that is, I don't know how big of an impact it's having on the team and their performance, but this team doesn't run anymore. Like, they got out of the gates hot and they were aggressive and they were like top 3 in stolen bases in April. Now I think they're down to 9th or 10th.
They only have 11 stolen bases in the month of May.
Right. And I mean, like, part of that is that Randy tweaked a hamstring. And so he wasn't running for a couple weeks. But Julio just recently had his first steal in over a month, and so I don't.
In general, he's looked kind of awkward running this month. I wonder
with a little something.
Yeah, so he got scratched from the lineup Thursday?
Yeah,
against the Astros with the back thing. He was able to make his way back into the lineup the next 3 days, but maybe that's something that's actually been bothering him for a little while. Because he doesn't look like himself.
He's not quite as explosive.
Yeah, like when he's been running down the line, and I don't think it's just like, he's just kind of, I don't
think he's dogging it.
I don't think he's hitting the brakes there. I think it's like he looks a little stiff running down the first base line to me. And again, he hasn't really attempted many stolen bases. He only has 1 stolen base for the entire month of May.
I think he has 1 steal, and before the 1 stolen base he had, his last successful attempt was April 17th.
Yeah, so I think something might be going on there with Julio.
Yeah, I think it's some kind of management thing, like a load management type of thing, where it's like, look, I don't want this to get any worse and all that, but either way, like, Randy's not running, Julio's not running. You don't have Robles in your lineup. You don't have Bliss in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem when Randy Arozarena and Julio Rodriguez have the same amount of steals in the month of May as Mitch Garver.
Yeah, and I mean, Randy had 8 in April, and he led the club, and he still leads the club.
Yeah,
like, they're just not running as much. And again, like, part of that is, well, if Julio's dinged up, you're not going to ask him to run too much. Randy's dinged up, you're not going to ask him to run too much. And Robles and Bliss are your best base stealers. They're both out. So part of it is that, but I mean, like, they were still stealing bases without Robles and Bliss in April. And so, they've just gotten really boring on the bases. They're not applying a lot of pressure to the defense. And they're striking out more, which is even less pressure put on the defense. So essentially what you're relying on is hitting the 3-run homer, which, is fine. That's how you're going to score most of your runs in the modern game. But you have to have like a little extra element because, you know what, Rowdy Tellez pretty much is only going to hit home runs, and so Randy Arozarena really is not, hitting as many home runs. So you're kind of a weirdly built offense right now where you're just kind of trying to piece it together with a lot of players you weren't counting on to play a lot.
Yeah.
And you just kind of stuck where it's like, you're not necessarily a fast team. You're not necessarily a big power hitting team. You're not a low strikeout type of team. I mean, you're just kind of a very mediocre offense right now when you don't have Polo playing, out of his mind, and you don't have, I mean, I don't want to say you don't have Cal playing out of his mind. He's still been great. Don't get me wrong, but like,
he has a 200 WRC plus in the month of May.
Yeah, so. Like, he's been great, but he's not hitting a home run every single day, and I'm not saying that's his fault or anything. It just, those were the things that were happening in April. He hit like 6 home runs in 6 games,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
he had 2 consecutive series where he hit 3 home runs in each.
right.
Like,
And so, yeah, he's just not doing that, and Polo's not pulling his weight, and also Polo's still getting an insane number of at bats. JP Crawford has slowed down after his fun run.
yeah.
So, yeah, you just
Uh,
have a lot of guys who are, kind of regressing back to the mean a little bit, and
uh,
then nobody has like stepped up to really like carry the mantle while these other guys kind of work their way back and get to
yeah.
those hot stretches again. So, like, Garver's been a little bit better, Solano's been a little bit better, but those guys aren't carrying the load offensively,
No.
even
Like
when they're swinging that
Tavares
well.
is starting to figure it out a little bit, it seems,
He had a
but
good week, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you still need JP, you still need Jorge to really get back to somewhere close to where they were a couple weeks ago, and
Yeah.
you still need Julio to eventually explode, but right now he's been fine. Cal's been really good. Randy, a little inconsistent, I would say.
He's third
Has
on
some,
the team in the month of May with
and he has
131
some,
WRC plus.
and he has some truly terrible at bats mixed
Yeah.
in there. There's like a lot of really bad at bats, and so yeah, I think the offense is just kind of regressing to the mean right now, and
Hmm.
they're doing it just before the pitching kind of gets back to 100%. They couldn't quite get to
Yeah,
the
line it
point
up.
where
Yeah.
they had their 5 guys back, and an average offense is good enough. And we say this understanding that they just went 3-4 in a week where they played terrible baseball. So
Yeah.
they scored 5 runs, I think, in 4 of the games, 3 of the games. So like they weren't statistically awful, but I think if you watch this club over the last week and you're having a real honest conversation, you would say, yeah, they didn't play good baseball last week. The offense wasn't good.
It's just it's like what I said after the game on Sunday in my short. We've over the last week we saw little pockets of offense, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like, all right, they'll score 3 here at the start of the game, but then that's it. That's their day.
Yeah.
Or like you're gonna have to wait until the 7th or the 8th for the explosion, essentially, like we saw in Chicago in the first game.
Yeah. They played what, 7 games last week, 63 innings. They had 1 game going. They have an extra innings game.
No.
No, they had a couple close games, but they played like 63 innings, and the offense had legitimately 4 good innings, 5 good innings the entire week.
Mm,
Like
yeah, somewhere
that's
in there.
just that's not going to be good enough to win enough games, and you're going to kind of be fortunate to go 3-4 if you have fewer than 10% of your innings. You're having good offensive innings. So right now it's still kind of a lull more than anything else, but I do think there is some just natural regression back to kind of what we expected this offense to look like. Um, but yeah, I'd like to see them start to run again. I
Yeah.
think that was a part of their philosophy in April, and it
Yeah.
just kind of vanished in May. And I still think they're getting on base enough at a high enough clip to try that and to try and get something working there. But we'll see. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with they're just not super comfortable with some of their big base dealers running right now. They're a little
Yeah.
bit hesitant to ask them, but yeah, they need to draw a few more walks, but they also need to put more pressure on the defense by stealing some bags and cutting down on the strikeouts a little bit.
Yeah. Mariners WRC plus rankings in the month of May. Cal Raleigh at 200. Rowdy Tellez comes in at number 2 at 137. Randy Rosarena at 131. Julio at 129. Then a pretty big drop off here. JP Crawford 101 WRC plus. Mitch Garver 86. Dylan Moore 85. Leody Tavares 73. Miles Mastroboni 68. Donovan Solano 62. Leo Rivas 55. Ben Williamson 46. Jorge Polanco 43. He has been your worst hitter by WRC plus. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. The Mariners are taking on the Washington Nationals for 3 games starting tonight. All 3 games are going to be night games, which I'm sure the Nationals don't appreciate because they have to go to Arizona starting Friday. So they have to play a night game, and then they have to hit the road and play another game the next day. This Nationals lineup, Colby, they're all left-handed. Their projected starting lineup will be 9 guys that all hit left-handed. Now, a couple of them are switch hitters, but yeah, it's a lot of lefties, and against a very right-handed heavy Mariners pitching staff. They do have 3 righties on their bench, and Alex Call, Med Rosario, and Riley Adams. But again, like the 9 guys you're probably going to see tonight, tomorrow, and maybe even Thursday, they're all going to be left-handed. They're all going to be hitting for the left side. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup. Not often you see a lineup this left-handed heavy. And that also goes to the pitching staff as well. You're going to see Mitchell Parker tonight, who's a lefty. Then Trevor Williams, who's the righty, tomorrow. The guy who Jazz Chisholm infamously said, this guy sucks, but somehow he makes it work. And then Mackenzie Gore on Thursday, who obviously had that great start to the year, and he's been pretty good this year. He hasn't been as elite as he was on opening day when he had 13 strikeouts or whatever.
Yeah,
but he's been he's really good, and he's running right now a 13.43 Ks per 9. So he's striking out a lot of dudes. He's missing a lot of bats, and the Mariners, obviously, like we just talked about, they have the 4th highest K rate in the month of May. So yeah.
Thankfully, the Mariners lineup against left-handed pitching is really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So get ready to see more Donovan Solano. Get ready to see more Mitch Garver. Yeah.
Get ready to probably not see any Jorge Polanco.
Which, again,
or Rowdy Tellez.
He's been your worst hitter. So
yeah.
Rowdy Tellez, though. Yeah. I mean, just let Rowdy hit against lefties. The splits are basically the same. Like, career splits are basically the same against lefties as they are against righties. He's just, neither side is particularly good, but they're basically the same. Like, he hasn't
shown against both. Like,
yeah. But he hasn't shown you that he's like significantly worse against lefties to the point that you should just outright bench him against every lefty that you see. But whatever, handedness is like the most important thing to Dan Wilson and the coaching staff, apparently.
I expect Gabe Spire to pitch in every single one of these games then. Because apparently that's the only guys he can get out, according to Dan Wilson, only against lefties or in blowouts, because he was a ghost in the series against Houston who basically ran out lineups of all righties.
Yeah.
So, yeah, handedness matters too much to Dan. I talked about this. I think this was on CTZ yesterday. It might have been. I don't know. We did mailbag on both. So, but like, yeah, what's the thing that drives you nuts about Dan the most right now? He still relies way too much on handedness matchups.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, as we've kind of learned over the first third of the Mariners season, the pitching matchups don't matter at all. They'll win the stupidest games. They'll lose the stupidest game. It doesn't matter. Like, you better win the first 2 because you're not beating Mackenzie Gore after they've beaten DeGrom and Hunter Brown and Crochet and
Michael King, Tarek Skubal.
Like,
they didn't necessarily beat Max Fried, but they won that game that he started.
Like, whatever. It just like, who knows? They might drop the first 2 and then they might score 7 off of Mackenzie Gore. Who knows? Like, whatever. I do know Trevor Williams will give them fits though, because he always seems to. That changeup, those guys just can't hit a changeup for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting series. It's kind of funny. You play the Astros, who essentially only have right-handed hitters right now. And now you come back home, you play the Nationals, who essentially only have left-handed hitters right now. So yeah, it'll be an interesting series. And, as we talk about all the time, you're better than the Nationals, but when you play a team, often matters more than anything else. And the Nationals are going to get to throw their best guy against you. And also Trevor Williams is a guy that, has handled you pretty well in his last couple of starts. And they have all these lefties. You only have one lefty on your entire pitching staff. So, it's kind of one of those things where we'll see what happens. The Mariners are better though. They should take 2 of 3 and they kind of need to, get off on a good start to this homestand, because it's the road trip didn't end that well. And you don't want that to spiral. And the last time the Mariners had an opportunity to spiral, they didn't. They swept the Padres. So hopefully they do something similar here against the Nationals. But it'll be an interesting matchup. And there's going to be a lot of pockets in this game where I imagine we're going to be looking at Dan Wilson being like, "What are you doing? Like what?
Yeah.
Walk me
Yeah.
through this, Dan. So
Yeah.
we'll see. It presents an interesting matchup, and I don't love it when Dan Wilson tries to play the matchups. I don't think he's particularly good at that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
hopefully they score some runs at the very least.
Yeah. If you can deal with CJ Abrams and James Wood and not let those guys beat you, you should be in a pretty good spot, because those are the only two guys in this Nationals lineup that have a WRC plus over 100. Now they are well above 100. James Wood has a 155 WRC plus and CJ Abrams has a 145. But after that, it's Nathaniel Lowe, former future Mariner, whatever. He's got a 91 WRC plus right now. He's obviously been struggling. Would still like the Mariners to inquire about him later on this year. Circle back on that, but yeah, he's not doing so hot right now. Kybert Ruiz, 95 WRC plus. Luis Garcia, Josh Bell, Robert Hassel, Jose Tena, Dalen Lyle, like all of those guys are 100 WRC plus at the moment. So yeah, if you can deal with Abrams and Wood, then should be all right. Should.
Yeah, I mean, you still got to be careful with Bell and Lowe.
Yeah.
And Garcia. I mean, they're still dangerous hitters, but yeah, it's been a rough year for them so far. So hopefully that continues for at least 3 more games.
That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.